Hello everybody, welcome back to another video in our series on EDA. This is going to be more examples with the axis keyword argument. Again, I can link some videos in the cards above if you'd like to see more details, but otherwise this video should be a pretty good introduction. So just kind of to get started, I have NumPy imported, and I have the same code as last time that generates this 10 by 3 array of random integers between 0 and 5. Here we're using the seed equal to 100, so if you run this code on your end, you should get exactly the same numbers. And the first part of this video, we're just going to explain and explore what we get by evaluating each of the following. So here, .max is an example of a method. So it's a function in Python that's attached to an object. In this case, it's attached to a NumPy n-dimensional array object, which is ARR. And what's going to happen here is if I just call ARR.max, well, let's run it and see if you can spot what it does. So I'll say ARR.max, and it says 4. So what this is doing is it's going through every number in ARR and taking the maximum. So 4 is the maximum number that shows up, so that's why we get 4. But what if instead I wanted to get the maximum, let's say, in each column? So if I look along this index 0 column, maximum is 4. Then we have 4 here, 4 here. So maximum in each of the columns is 4. And the way we could do that is by remembering that if I want to kind of take something along this direction, so kind of imagine I'm collapsing in this vertical direction, I use axis equals 0. So what this will give, so think about what it should return. What's the shape of the NumPy array that it returns? So let's see. I have ARR.max, axis equals 0. And notice here, this has length 3, and that's because of the 3 columns. So it's saying in this index 0 column, the maximum is 4, then it's 4 in the index 1 column, and again, 4 in the index 2 column. So if that was index 0, you can probably guess, well, not index, if that was axis 0, what's axis 1 going to do? Same concept, but now we're moving in this direction, so we're collapsing left to right. So maximum in this row will be 4, then 2, then 2, then 4, and so on. So again, think about the shape of the array that we should get. So let's run this code. And we can see here, this has length 10. I could do .shape on this. So maybe I'll do it in separate cell. So you can see it's length 10 NumPy array. And what's happening here is, again, it's taking the maximum in each of the rows. So we can see in many of the rows the maximum is 4, but we also have maximums of 2 and 3 as well. So again, that was kind of, again, recap of this axis keyword. Hopefully this example makes a little bit more sense of it. Another example of a method is something called min for minimum. So what I could do is I could do exactly the same thing with max, but now just try it with minimum. So let's see, I can go here. Now let's do ARR.min. Again, let's do axis equals 0. So what this is saying is that in the first column, the minimum number that shows up is 1, and then in the remaining columns, it's 0. So let's take a look. So what's the minimum in this leftmost column? That's 1. Minimum in the middle one is 0, and minimum in the last one is also 0. Similarly, we could do a minimum along axis equals 1. And now this is taking the minimum among all of the rows. So we can see 0, 0, 0, then we have 2, 2, 0, 0, then we have 1, 0, and 2. Very good. So now let's try to answer this question here. So it's saying, how many rows of ARR and how many rows of ARR is the maximum entry in that row, 2 or less? So remember, the way that we get the maximum of rows is we say ARR.max, axis equals, little pop quiz, should be axis equals 1. As a reminder, this is what it looks like. I'm going to call this row max. And then what I can do is I can say, well, where is row max less than or equal to 2? So here it's saying, okay, false, true, true. So these rows, corresponding rows, do have a maximum of 2. And the last one, or kind of a maximum of 2 or less, I should say. Versus, let's see. No, I think this is good. This is what I wanted to say. So we're almost there. It's asking us how many of these rows. Typically for a how many problem, you're going to use sum because we're going to count, versus if you're asked to get a subarray, you're going to use Boolean indexing. So let's just get the sum. So I can say sum of row max less than or equal to 2. And this is saying there are 3 rows where the maximum entry is 2 or less. If we scroll up to ARR again, or maybe let me kind of just remind us what it looks like here. So let's see, this is one such row. Here's another one, so that's 2 and 3. So good, looking good so far. One other thing I'll show you in this video, so this was, the question was asking us to get how many rows. What if I ask for the subarray where the max entry in every row is 2 or less? So super straightforward. All we do now is just use our Boolean indexing. So I'd say ARR row max less than or equal to 2. And we can see here we get precisely those 3 rows. All right, I think this is a good place to end the video. In the next video, we'll do a quick refresher on writing functions in Python. Thanks for watching. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th video in our first unit on EDA. The purpose of this video is to introduce how to write functions in Python, and the function we write in this video is going to be a culmination of some of the tasks that we had been solving in the previous videos. If you're already super comfortable with functions in Python, just use this as a refresher. Or if this is your first time ever coding in Python, use this video as an introduction to the syntax of writing functions. So our task for this video is to write a function getSub, which takes as input a NumPy array ARR and an integer n, and as output returns the subarray of ARR containing all rows with at least 2 entries equal to n. So this should be really similar from our previous video where instead of having just general n, we used n equal to 2. So to get started, I've imported NumPy, and the basic syntax for writing a function is we start with the word def for definition, and then we type the name of our function. So in this case, I want to name it getSub, and then round parentheses, and as an argument, I pass exactly what the arguments of my function should be, separated by commas. So in this case, I want ARR as an input, and I also want an integer n, so I separate them by a comma, and then I place a colon. What's going to happen is if I press return, notice it gets indented automatically. So if I want something to be executed within my function, it has to be within this indented block. So don't mess with this, even though it should do it for you. If you mess up the indexing or the indenting, kind of go back, what I sometimes do is you can delete this line and then press return again. So it should indent it for you automatically. You shouldn't have to mess with that. But okay. Hopefully this problem is familiar. First thing we're going to do is, let's say, ask where is ARR equal to n? And then what we want to do, so remember we're tasked with, we want all rows with at least 2 entries equal to n. So I want to say, let's take the sum along axis equals 1. So let's get the counts of how many elements in each row are equal to n. So I'll call this counts. Then what I'll do is I'll get the subarray. So I can say subarray, let's maybe call it like this, and we do ARR, and we ask, well, where is counts greater than or equal to 2? Now, if I were to just run this cell right now, so there's no error, so that's fine, but what's happening is nothing gets returned, right? So here I've defined subarray. I could just type return in this line and not even define subarray, but just to kind of show you, we could do return, and I want to return subarray. So no error, this is looking good so far. And now let's just test it with a couple of examples. So I'm going to make a much bigger array than what we were working with in the previous videos. So I'm going to say RNG is np.default underscore RNG. Let's again use seed equal to 100. And let's say ARR equals RNG.integers between 0 and 5, but now for the size, let's make it 100 by 3. And let's see, default underscore. Oops, what am I missing here? I'm not random, right? Very good. I probably should have left that mistake in, but it's okay. And let's see, now let's take a look at ARR. So here it is, 100 rows, very big array. Let's try our function on it. So let's say, let's do get sub ARR, comma 5, and you could probably guess, so based off of how ARR is coded. And all right, so remember we're doing random integers between 0 and 5, but 5 is not included, right? So if I ask how many rows have at least 2 elements equal to 5, this should return an empty array. So we can see here, empty array, but we could do the same thing now, but let's try it with 4. So let's do get sub ARR, comma 4. And we can see here, these are all of the rows where at least 2 elements are equal to 4. So one thing that you could do for practice is you could try to write the same function, but using a for loop instead. So a for loop in this case is definitely worse. The one that we have here is going to be better than a for loop, but it would be good practice, especially if you're still getting used to syntax of Python. All right, I think this is a good place to end the video. Thank you for watching.